Today we will see why this sudden ceasefire happened. On the one hand, some people in Pakistan are giving the perception that the war between Iran and the United States was like a WWE wrestling show where two wrestlers only do one show. One even said that all this was to get Trump a Nobel Prize. We will see if this is all that has happened in these few days, or if there is another aspect to it that has become apparent to our hypocrisy. We all know that this conflict started with an Israeli attack. At that time, many journalists around the world were saying that Israel had the best technology in the world and Iran could not harm it. The world had great confidence in Israel's air defense system. When this conflict started with Hamas, and they were firing low-cost rockets in self-defense, we could see that even if Israel's Iron Dome was 99% accurate, that 1% was still devastating. Just imagine, if even a non-explosive 6-inch pipe hits a facility from such a height, its impact would be devastating. Therefore, considering this percentage, the impact could have been calculated in advance, which we have practically seen. But Israel miscalculated Iran's strength and attacked. Israel also knew that Iran would definitely respond, that's why it was prepared in advance. But the world saw that Iran deceived the Western air defense system very well, and gave Israel a response that neither Israel nor the West expected. Just as Israel defeated 6 countries at once in Desert Storm and established air superiority, that is why they knew that the principle established in the world is that whoever has air superiority will have the upper hand in war. For this reason, America may also be thinking that Israel is enough for Iran. Moreover, Israel's air defense is complemented by the air defenses of Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, and if any assistance is still needed, the United States can provide assistance from its bases. But despite so many safety measures, the world had no idea that all these calculations would fail when it came to conflict with Iran. Now that Israel felt it was losing its edge, it began to pressure the United States to join the war. And the whole world was watching as Israel began to fight for its survival. It no longer remembered the attacks it had carried out on Gaza. Now, the country that had single-handedly proven its control and superiority over the entire Arab world was hoping for help from the world. The United States was also not expecting such a response from Iran, so it was not prepared to attack Iran like it did in Afghanistan and Iraq.
It is not too late for the Iraqi military to act with honor and protect your country by permitting the peaceful entry of coalition forces to eliminate weapons of mass destruction.
Because Iran proved that it neither broke any peace agreement nor was it present at the table for an agreement, but war was imposed on it by Israel. All these things were tarnishing America's image. Now the public in America is starting to turn against Trump. According to Reuters, 79% of the American public was afraid of Iranian retaliation. But the world also knows that the Israeli lobby in America is quite strong, so it was not easy for Trump to keep himself separate from this war for long. But Trump also knew that Iran's case would not be like Iraq and Afghanistan.
People don't understand, this is not going to be the same as Iraq. This could be much, much, much worse. It will have great consequences for Pakistan, adverse consequences for our country. It could unleash terrorism, which people would forget Al-Qaeda and those types, because the Iranian, the Shia element in Islam is very cohesive. They have a much greater sense of martyrdom than the Sunni Muslims.
Where control was gained by a sudden attack, where there was a frontal confrontation with guns and RPGs, which could be suppressed by building American bases. Iran is geographically covered by mountains on all sides, which provides it with protection from attackers. Even if the US enters Iran and succeeds in establishing a base, it will not be able to maintain it for 2 basic reasons. The first reason is that unless you have local support in a region, you cannot control that region. As in the case of Afghanistan and Iraq, the US had local support. Although they were telling the world that the people of Iran were not happy with the current regime, in reality they knew that it was all propaganda spread by them. The second thing was that the United States would not be able to immediately arrive and establish air defense, and if Iran attacked their bases, the United States would not be able to stop it. Iran would have the justification that it is defending its homeland, therefore no international law can protect America. That is why if America had sent its army on the ground, Iran would have been a death trap. On the other hand, Iran also did not want a direct conflict with the United States, because even if the United States did not come for a ground attack, it would still attack Iran from its bases in the Middle East, and if Iran responded, it would mean bringing another country into the war. And it would have been a good option for the US to keep Iran in trouble for a long time, even if it didn't attack immediately. But this was not acceptable to Israel. In addition, since Iran is a Muslim country, it would not want to take a step that would lead to this war reaching Muharram, because in Islam, war cannot be fought in certain months, Muharram being one of them. Therefore, both Iran and the United States wanted to find a way to stop this war for a while. The United States attacked Iran, obeying Israel, but informed Iran in advance so that Iran would not suffer a loss for which it would have to respond. That's why. As soon as the attack was carried out, it was announced that we did not want war with Iran, and even the talk of regime change was suppressed. This also dashed the hopes of the potential Shah of Iran, who was dreaming of his own new government in Iran. Now, as we mentioned, Iran also did not want the war to be prolonged, in which other countries, along with the United States, would also join the war against Iran, so Qatar was informed so that Iran's attack could be effectively prevented. If Iran really wanted to carry out this attack, it should have used its hypersonic missiles, which cannot be easily countered. That's why Trump immediately announced a ceasefire and sent the message that the war was over. It was not in Israel's interest for the United States to exit the war in this way, so they continued the attacks even after the ceasefire, prompting Trump to strongly criticize Israel and even abuse it. The biggest question that arises is whether regime change will now be attempted. The answer is that this ceasefire is temporary. In fact, the US and Israel needed time to replan. But one thing is certain. Iran trusted Allah more than its weapons, and despite being a weak country, which has been under sanctions since 1979, it has proven that it has gained superiority in the context of its ideology. While Israel and the US had to come to a ceasefire, and if they were in a strong position, they would have made Iran surrender, just like Trump was trying to make Iran surrender at the start of the conflict.